Mr Acting Speaker, I make a contribution to the Greater Sydney Commission Bill 2015. I know the opposition does not oppose the bill and proposes a number of substantial amendments that I don't think it's yet formulated. I want to begin by saying, firstly, that the concept of the Greater Sydney Commission and what it actually is in this bill was a suggestion by the Leader of the Opposition when he was Shadow Planning Minister and was part of Labor's policy. It's actually been implemented in this bill and effectively been made an advisor to the government as to the operation of regional plans, or what are called district plans. I do say this, I thank the Minister for Planning for his courtesy in providing me with a copy of the bill before it was second read, and I did have a discussion with him as to what he proposed in it. I have the highest regard for the Minister for Planning and certainly his qualifications as a PhD in planning law, and I accept from the Minister his assertion that this is a genuine attempt to reform planning in the state and that it has to stand the test of time. It's not political and he's not been subject to any political direction in what he proposes. So that the criticisms of various parts of this bill are meant to be constructive criticisms, bearing this in mind, that the Minister and I have similar views as to how planning should be reformed in this state, and whilst some might think that it is going back to the future, I think both of us regard the 1979 Environmental Planning and Assessment Act as groundbreaking legislation and a model for planning in this state that had effectively been destroyed by this Parliament from the early 1990s. Now, I know that that's the Minister's views because I have listened to his podcasts in lectures that he has given at Macquarie University. What I say in respect of this bill, though, is the Minister had a golden opportunity of actually fixing planning in accordance to his views and my views, and effectively squibbed it. The Greater Sydney Commission is simply a recreation of a body that will recommend to the Minister regional plans and what were called sub-regional plans. In the bill they're called district plans, and provide advice to the Minister. I am extremely pleased that the Minister has ensured that the provision of regional and district plans are subject to recommendations to him and he's making the decision. Others say the Premier should make the decision. It doesn't matter as long as whoever's making the decision for regional and district plans is accountable to Parliament for the decisions they make. Because these plans will affect this state for the next 100 or 200 years, and it is fundamental that the decision makers are accountable in a democracy to elected representatives, and that ensures scrutiny. The other philosophy that I maintain, and this is where I think the opportunity has escaped the Minister, is this: that significant decisions that affect the quality of life of citizens and do so for generations to come should be made by elected people, not by bureaucrats. It is unreasonable to assume that bureaucrats can make these decisions, and secondly, the delegating of effectively political decisions to bureaucrats does not really escape the liability ultimately you have for allowing that to occur. So my view is that it is right and proper for the state to make decisions that affect that are of state or regional significance, and things that aren't of state or regional significance should be made by elected councillors who should be forced to apply the law, not like many have conducted themselves in the past, and there is a way in which to do that. Because I don't lead for the opposition, I have limited time, so I want to go to some statutory provisions which indicate considerable failure by this bill, and hope the Minister gives it consideration and picks it up. Firstly, I want to just draw to the House's attention the provisions and functions in respect of regional plans under section 75AC of the proposed section 75AC, which are effectively clause 14 of Schedule 5. That actually talks about the provision of both regional plans and district plans and what needs to be taken into consideration. Now, in the proposed 75AC 3, they require those commissions to have regard to state environmental planning policies that apply to the region, and in respect of and similar in respect of the district plans. Again, they need to take into consideration of state environmental planning policies. The state environmental planning policies have been the greatest adverse impact to the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, because they have cut across the entire objectives to the Act. I'm sure if you ask the Minister's views in respect of state environmental planning policies and how they impact upon the intended framework of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, he would agree. Now, bearing in mind the Minister is making the decisions in respect of regional plans and district plans, there is no need for the state to go over the top and neuter the Commission by having them take into consideration state environmental planning policies. In fact, I would have thought, bearing in mind the substance of the Commission as it is providing advice to the Minister in respect of these plans, should be telling you that the current state environmental planning policies are inconsistent with their recommended direction, so that if there is one in existence, you would then say, well, that state environmental planning policy should apply or should not apply to the Sydney region. The Minister's, I think he's nodding his head. I think he gets that point, unless you're looking at something else on the phone. But it is a point of substance, and I'm sure the Minister, when he looks at it, will follow that. The other issue that I am particularly concerned about, which is buried away, is the provision in the proposed section 75AE 3, which provides this, which is buried away. Often if these things are buried away by other ministers, they're usually a stuff-up, but they wouldn't be from this minister. It says this: the document entitled The Plan for Growing Sydney, published on the website of the department and in force at the commencement of this part, is taken to be the regional plan made under this part for the Greater Regional Sydney, the initial GSR plan. If this Act gets enacted in this way, all of a sudden there is a regional plan. The regional plan, which is what's contained in the Plan for Growing Sydney, if you look at that plan, is to be read in conjunction with the government's long-term transport master plan and rebuilding New South Wales infrastructure strategy. You are immediately, on the enacting of this bill as drafted into law, overriding every single local environmental plan in New South Wales. That means that, for example, if Meriton wanted to put an development application on the domain, of course it would be refused because it would not be a use consistent with the zoning. But should the domain be owned by the government, for example, and the government felt that the land was not being utilised to its best extent, then the application could be made and the application considered. So you're effectively you're effectively overriding every single local environmental plan. Now, bearing in mind the high-powered commission, irrespective of its constitution, is going to provide advice to the minister as to what should be in a regional plan. Why adopt these documents that are floating around the website? There's been no reference to it really in the minister's second reading speech. It's tucked away in the bill, and in itself will cause in itself a substantial problem. And my view about the application of that provision as a matter of law, I don't think is wrong. In fact, is right. The other thing that is buried away, which is a matter of considerable concern, and that is, I'm just going to go over time, so I'll ask for an extension of time, Mr. Acting Speaker.
The question is the member's time be extended. All those that opinion say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The member for Heffron.
The other provision that is of considerable concern that is buried away as well is in Clause 11 of Schedule 5 is the proposed Section 53 capital A, which provides that the Greater Sydney Commission may make an environmental planning instrument for the purposes of environmental planning in each local government area in the Greater Sydney region. Any such instrument may be called a local environmental plan. In other words, the Greater Sydney Commission, apart from having an enormous task, and I don't think they'll be successful, but the minister's trying, has also been given an opportunity of being able to prepare LEPs. That means this commission could do spot rezonings. So, for example, in a residential area, for example, where for example, the member for Cabramatta lives, the Greater Sydney Commission could zone the place, the block of land next door, to put in a 20-storey block of flats, if it wished to, as a spot rezoning. That is not the way in which a planning scheme should work, even a reformed planning scheme will work. Now, the minister himself cannot prepare a local environmental plan in that circumstance. The minister can direct the council to prepare one. So if the minister can't himself prepare the LEP, why would you give the commission the ability to do so when ultimately its function is to prepare regional plans and is to prepare local plans? So I have this view that these statutory bodies should not be making a number of these lower down decision-making processes. I have this view that the processes contained in the original 1979 Act were right. The commissions of inquiry, which were not bodies appointed by the minister, because governments of the day who are frightened of making the decisions because the local media will attack them, or they're told somebody's made a political donation, are passing them down to these commissions or these independent bodies to actually make development approvals. But you're not really delegating your political responsibility anyway. They're holding you to account. And these bureaucrats who are granting approvals, they're more frightened of the elected people of vocal minority groups in making these decisions. So I do have a philosophical view in that regard, and there were steps in the 1979 Act to fix it, and there were steps, they were called designated developments for matters of state and regional significance, to be seen to be out of the political process and transparency given with them. And I thought this bill might have been a golden opportunity of doing it. Now, when the 79 Act did provide for regional and sub-regional plans, the government never prepared any. They never prepared any. The department was not capable of preparing one. Now, if you ask Sam Haddett, who's a substantial loss because he has the history, the only effort they made to prepare a sub-regional plan was the Botany Bay sub-regional plan. It was probably the leading plan, and it was never successful because governments won't fund the necessary infrastructure in conjunction with planning. Because the Minister for Roads is not going to have the planning minister tell him what road he's got to fund, and the Minister for Transport's not going to want to put a rail line where the Minister for Planning says should be one. So the Minister is trying, and this bill doesn't require that either, but the Minister's is trying something that hasn't been tried before. He's locking these senior bureaucrats, including the Treasury Secretary, onto the Commission to have input into the strategic planning process to try and break down those government silos. The trouble is the Treasury never want to spend anything anyway, so I'm not sure it'll be successful, but it's certainly a very clever and worthwhile way of being able to achieve it. So in terms of the actual implementation of the Commission, I don't care who's on it as long as there's expert input. It should overcome the problem that the government had under the 1979 Act. And it should provide advice to the Minister. It's all these other statutory approval processes that are going to override local planning schemes now that cause me considerable problem. I don't mind if the Minister adopts a Commission's district plan that causes a local environmental plan to be overridden, but I don't want the Commission without a plan to start overriding local environmental plans. That will cause the government of the day more trouble than Part 3A caused, and the reality is that the Minister won't be able to hide behind the Commission. And once the planning process loses its integrity, once the public lose confidence in the planning system, then of course there'll be either knee-jerk reaction by this government, or when there's a change of government, and the very thing the Minister's trying to achieve with this bill is going to be unravelled. So I actually think that the Minister has missed an opportunity about not implementing what his actual complete views are.
Order.
But having said that, I do commend the Bill of the House.
The member's time has expired.